different skills also develop. But this is also a group of people, not other women of the village, not the powerful man or any man of the village. Also, BRAC is good with lobbying and advocacy with the government, with other networks. So we are very good. If we do a program, we also try to influence with the program results, the governments or the government results, government policy change. So now Bangladesh has this Domestic Violence Act and all many acts. Not that BRAC is doing everything, but we are good with lobbying. And like people know that, oh, if BRAC comes, then they will ask for it. But why this is happening? These 1,000 people are not protesting against beating of 2 women. And then we realized we really didn't bring men and women together to analyze their situation, identify the problem, and then take decisions. So men and women are not really joining hands. So then we started this Gender Equality Action Learning Program with men and women, and also we included students, school-going young people, and out-of-school young people. So there, like what we did, we just talked to them, briefed them about what is gender, how it is affecting our everyday life, what is quality, what is change, and is it right? We just asked the question, is it right? And then these men and women who became these gender justice educator, volunteer educator for others, they have their own commitment ready, they go to their own village, then they talk to other people about these issues. So issues around food, health and nutrition, education, access to control over resources and assets, rest and recreation, violence against women and children. So by doing so, now we realize that yes, there is a cultural change is happening. And we can see it even here in different other organizations when they are sharing their stories. Only the different thing is BRAC is very large. So when we do something, it's easier for us now. We have the structure and system. We can become very large immediately. So you can see the results like immediately shoot up from 30% to 70%, things like that. Now, so there are many examples, evidences can support this transformation. There are, so talking about this, if all of us here, 11,000 people from 100 countries, have the same goal, some of us are much better in understanding, doing, some of us are learning, but still we have the same goal. If it is true, what are we going to do from here? This question is kind of killing me, at least from last night. What is happening? We cannot just ask women to engage, please, please, please engage men. Not anymore. We don't want to overburden our women again and again. Men has to come forward. A transformation has to happen where? Where the power structure is, right? The legislation, the administration, the policies, media, both print and electronic media. The simple books that children are reading, and we all are reading books and papers and documents, information, education, material, communication materials has to be written differently. So the whole gender stereotype has to be revisited and transformed. We have to do it. We have to make this commitment from this big symposium. We don't want to come back here again after 10 years and 20 years to talk about the same situation. Okay, we have done this little thing and that little thing, it works very well. So what? Community has not changed, policy has not changed, government ministries cannot change. So what? We are hearing good stories from the ministry. That's encouraging. Everyone is here. So I would like to see this symposium has very time-bound commitment. 2, 3, we don't want to make everything happen in a time. Within a time-bound period, 1, 2, 3 maximum, whether we can do those things. And if when I said 1, that doesn't mean it has to be complete from A to Z. Some of us will be still in the AB, some of us will be here and there. But those understanding we have to have. What we really would like to change to make this world free from exploitation and violence, and we can achieve gender equality and gender justice. Thank you very much.
Thank you. We're just going to, there was a good suggestion from a panelist, and I think we're just going to break the regular pattern. And because this is a session, I think I don't want people dozing, you know. And actually, there are 6 speakers, so there are a number of panelists, so speakers. So we can break the session and have few session question and answers for maybe 10 to 15 minutes, and then again go back to the other 3 speakers. So whoever. Yeah, please. Is there a, yeah, somebody at the microphone.
Hi, my name is Lakshmi, and I work in a development in an NGO. I just have some comments regarding women's participation. I don't see many women to start with in very senior positions. And where they are, I don't think they speak. And where they do speak, their voices are not heard. That's one comment. And the second comment about you, about what you said, there's been a lot of commodification of women in item songs in Bollywood. And there needs to be a serious debate, not only on television, but I think engaging more people in the discussions. And the third comment is, she just said that 2 weeks paternity leave is given to men. I doubt we go and ask them what they're doing the 2 weeks. They must be watching cricket on the TV. I wonder how many of them really, because I did some study a long time back, that of course, that was among Indian immigrants in Sydney. I've been abroad for 28 years. For the last 3 years I've been in India. And I noticed even when men do housework, but they do all work relating to outside things, like, you know, shopping and playing with, taking children to the sports. But all the activities which are feminine, they won't do it. But anyway, some work, I mean, like, it's a different context there. But I think all corporations, including NGOs, should give more family-friendly policies, and they should ensure, like in the West, that, you know, working from home and more encourage their men to participate. Just enable policies. That's all. We can only give them the tools. Thank you.
In fact, on your item song aspect, I would like to respond, because I've been talking to a few actors. And of course, personally, I feel that, you know, it's really sad and unfortunate that, you know, it has become almost essential for a story to have that dimension of an item song. But within, I think, their fraternity, there are different voices. So as someone, I don't want to name, one actor said that he completely disagrees with the notion of item songs being there in the movies. Another one says nobody has put a gun on you to come and watch them. So there are different viewpoints within Indian cinema.
But even when you see the camera,
yeah,
it is reporting in different parts of
exactly.
the body.
So I personally agree with you.
And the language, you know, it's all double meaning songs. All that I'm saying is there need to be more public discussion on this.
On this,
Let's
yes.
not have a one.
In fact, if you
Yeah,
watch Satyamev Jayate, then Deepika Padukone, who has participated in lots of these item songs, said, my God, she didn't think it would have that impact. So sometimes you just do it as a drill, you know, you don't even think about it.
We need to have a public discussion about this.
And actually that's true for us also. Kangana wasn't. Kangana is very conscientious.
But can we have some few sets of questions and then? Sorry. Oh yes. Sorry, actually this is a very Indian contest. Rakesh Raju is saying.
Okay.
We'll just come back to that. Yeah.
As the word itself and it connotates in the context of a woman, an item. So woman as an item.
As a commodity, you know, I mean, you know, that is picturized on a woman, which is very,
Which kind of,
and very peppy.
yeah. Which kind of misuses creative liberty, I would say, to kind
I
of.
can see, I mean, the Indian audience getting energized, but there are other people.
I am Leena Sushant, and I represent Breakthrough. It's nice to be here because we work with BRAC on issues what Shipa was sharing, and as well Preeti Sudan has been a champion for what the activist organizations like Breakthrough are working. But at the same time, it's just a comment which, since we work and we think and we eat and we just keep on working on these issues, many a times the communications which we see and the discussions and the discourses that men need to be involved, men need to empower women. But the fact is, we are again being biased by saying that men need to share their powers. Whereas, at times people view them as perpetrators or they see them as protectors, but it's a big spectrum. And why should men be sharing or doing work to empower women? So the larger cause where you are working not to empower women, but you're looking towards a better future, a better world. That jargon is at times missing in the discourse. Many a times we see a lot of communication which goes, बेटियों को बेटों के जैसे पढ़ाओ. Why like beta? So all those discussions are sometimes lacking the entire picture, which doesn't make it still very equal. And that is something really we would like to say. Engage men not to empower women only, but to tell them that you are contributing to a better world.
No, in fact, they have to empower themselves. That's why I was saying that, be compassionate.
Yeah, I agree with you.
Let's allow men to show their emotions. Let them care for our kids.
Thank
We're just going to have two more and then we'll go back to we'll come back to you, ma'am. Please, we'll just have two more and then there's one here and one here. Is this something related with what they have spoken? Yeah. But I'm just going to take one last and then we'll come back to speakers because of the time constraint. Please, Ruby.
I just wanted to resonate with what you said, and one of the way we would like to look at it, and I'm talking for I belong to this organization called Mythica, and we were running the Delhi mobilization as a lead up to the symposium. We called it equal participation for gender justice. So it's a question of building participation, and even if you're looking at gender justice as a larger part of within the larger discourse of social justice, there is no other way. Everybody has to be an equal stakeholder in it, and it's not about calling men specially like you have to do it. It's just that everybody has to do it, and of course you are part of that everybody, and that would probably lend to building a little less threatening and little less pressurizing dialogue spaces, and it's possibly a way one could look at this. Second thing, I wanted to just comment on the media angle of it, and yes, there is so much media around us, and there is really nothing we can do about it, except perhaps learn how to read it, and learn how to go beyond what is on the surface, and maybe teach our children that just don't get taken, rather than censoring because you can't. It's a larger battle out there, and there is too much politics. But if we are actually looking at becoming media literate, all of us, and if it's part of our school children, everybody, they learn to read media, I think there is some hope there. So that's all I wanted to say.
Yep, just wanted to respond to Ms. Preeti's compassionate statement. I completely agree with you. What men and boys miss because of the genderization process, enormous. And I think that is highly underestimated. And along with compassion, when we do work with men, I think, when the development sector, BRAC has been a leader in this, when development sector initially started evolving and expanding, we were talking about community participation, and we latched on to women because women were responsive, would do all the hard work. And now we are turning to men. And at this period, I hope our learnings will be a little bit more accelerated when we involve men. It's not just involvement, but true participation and true ownership to some of the processes. In that angle, I would like to ask you a question. In fact, I had a chance of interacting with some of the government departments. And when there are so many things hidden in large organizations, particularly like the government, and I work with human resources and health. And when we talk about the frontline health workers, who are largely women, the kind of issues they face is incredible. Not just the harassment, but the lock they get into in terms of the challenges that they have in the field vis-a-vis what they get as, tough side of the men who are above them as supervisors, I think is something we would really urge you to look at. Because this is something I keep hearing as voices from the ground, which continues to remain unaddressed. And it's 1 million workers, not one or two.
See, I think what you said is so important. It is this double burden that women face, both at the. Am I talking out of turn? Okay. So no. What you said is very correct. the double burden that women face, and especially, you know, when they are working at the field level, at the cutting edge, it is not only opposition, but it is also, you know, sometimes making them ineffective. But then again, you see, it was through getting together that women were getting a voice. So the ANMs or the Anganwadi teachers all getting together, that was one way. But I think you are right, we need to relook at that strata which does the most work, is not very well paid. This government at least has that kind of thing in their manifesto also, you know, to look at the salary structures of the frontline workers, which is a very good thing, I think. Then secondly, I'd also like to say that yes, you know, I am 1983 batch, very old and ancient. We were just 10% in the IAS then. We continue to be 10% in the IAS even in 2014. But let me assure you, though we are very few, we make sure we are heard.
Yes, thank you very much. I'm Sherry Sikinpuria and I work for German Development Cooperation. My comment, actually, it's not really a question. My comment is, you know, we tend to look at the binary, men and women. And I think it's important that we look at patriarchy here. We look at power, because I don't think it's about men or it's about women, because even women are big soldiers of patriarchy. And I think this is something that we all know, we work with, we live with, and we've kind of grown up with it. I think another point that I would like to say is issues faced by women are very different from women issues. The moment you term something as a woman issue, you exclude everyone else, which includes LGBTQ, which is, according to me, very excluded in most of the discussions that we're having here. Any issue that relates to violence, we always look at it is women related. Yes, women are most affected by violence, and I don't think you can take that away. But at the same time, violence is not a woman's issue, according to me. Violence is an act, we have to look at violence in isolation. I think patriarchy is something that we have to undress, uncover, understand, and work with. I don't think that it's a simplistic blueprint that you get men and boys on board, and then, you know, this entire gender justice will be kind of, you know, on a platter. I doubt that exists. So I just wanted to know also perhaps if, you know, I know media plays a very big role, and even social media is playing perhaps even a larger role today. And I think censorship, banning, stopping, according to me, are all fine, but, you know, honestly, we are a democratic country, and I think a lot of the country, there is creativity and all of that. I'm not justifying item songs, but I'm saying there is a way to understand these kind of issues. And I think the more hype, the amount of talk we have around item songs, I wish we had around domestic violence and marital rape. You know, we talk about certain issues with give it so much importance in the media, and we're not looking at other issues. So it's important to balance out these issues and to see what needs to be there and what doesn't, because often it's very politically driven also. Yeah, thank you.
We're just going to actually stop the question answer. We'll come back to it again, and we'll go back to the speakers. I'd like to invite Mamta, who works with DFID and has a long experience of working on the issues of the gender equity.
Hi, I'm stepping in for a colleague of mine who couldn't come. And I'm on lots of medication. I'm a little groggy, so if I doze off in between. I just want to make a couple of, I just want to talk about a couple of things from DFID's point of view and what we have learned over the years and where we are, the direction we are going into. Yes, we all recognize that it's important to work with men and boys for women's empowerment. So far, we've been doing it, looking at them as gatekeepers and not really looking at them, understanding their perspectives, their aspirations. But we've been beginning to do that through several programs that I'll mention lately, a little later. But yes, when we talk about women, it is to be seen as allies and supporters, not really as a parallel movement, or not really as someone, or not in a patronizing or a protective role. So where we're coming from is to look at them as allies and supporters. The other big thing for us is that, you know, men and boys is not a monolithic group. There are a lot of powers inequalities within that, class, caste, socioeconomic background, they're also fundamental, especially in India's context. So you can't, like in DFID we have this women and girls as a big focus, and we have to constantly say women and girls and exclusion and the layers within it. So it's very important that we continue to unpeel this and look at the different layers within this big term of men and boys. We've also learned that it's for women's empowerment, it's not as easy to reach out to men and in a sustained, continuous way as we would have been able to do with women because of various reasons, because they travel, they move around, they're not interested. So we are trying to look at what are some of the ways. Yeah, so there are different ways we are exploring. For example, in one of our work in Bihar on violence against women, where the incidence is as high as 60%, we do think that there are 40% men who are positive role models and who you need to promote. But and then we wanted to work with the husbands of this SHG group members, but we couldn't find them. We couldn't because they were all over the country. So how do you actually build that connect, and how do you use technology to keep in touch? So these are very real programmatic issues that we are grappling with. I mean, it's fine to say that we need to work with men and boys, but how do you actually make that happen for women's empowerment? I mean, we've been working with men and boys on a lot of our program, whether it's agriculture or it's health, or whatever, So it's not that we don't know how to work with them or where to find them, but how to involve them in this aspect. So one is, of course, about promoting positive role models, opening out the smaller community meetings that we have where men and women and the community can together reflect and look at an issue and understand and respond to it. One of the other things that we've been lately doing is do a lot more work with the private sector, and we find that there the barriers are perhaps a lot more deeper. So, for example, the boards, the companies. I mean, one of the things we would say, okay, we would like to have X number of women on the board. Very difficult, or that we would like to see X number of good working policies in place or the acts in place and so on. So that's again an area that we are struggling with. But we have had some successes. We are working at DFID UK level. We have this big program called Leadership for Change, where we are trying to look at building evidence on how do you work with men and boys better. In our work in Bihar and Madhya Pradesh, we're working on violence, both in public places and in domestic violence. We're looking at how men and boys' attitudes shifts, again, using the participatory methodologies and so on. So we're building rigorous evidence and evaluation around it. And I mean, one recent thing we had to do, an example I'll give is we had this scholarship program where our target initially was only for scheduled tribe girls and tribal girls and no one else. But then we figured the dropout rate, this was for the higher secondary education, the dropout rate for boys was also dipping in certain pockets very drastically. So you can't have a program, especially in education, that just targets one particular group against the other. Finally, I think this entire discussion on men and boys for gender justice also gives us a huge opportunity to look at some of our other bigger programs, whether it is on tax reforms or governance or urban and so on, to see how do we work with those institutions and all those big players and changing and building these components more actively into that work. I think I'll stop there. Thank you.
Thank you, Mamta. I think, I don't know, I mean, this is one of the things which I wanted to also raise it for a long time. I mean, especially in the development sector, we work with the men and boys who are also part of who are getting affected by that development agenda, who are actually on the below the ladder and who need to be addressed. At the same time, because of we work with the woman and we look at the patriarchy, and they are also perpetrators. So in a way, they are also the victims and they are also the perpetrators. How do we deal with them in the development project, whether it's a government? And I think it's a very large issue. And thanks, Mamta, for raising it. We'd like to invite, again, there were two speakers who were replaced, so I'll have to check my list. Yeah. Yeah, sorry. Luis Mora, he's a person who's the chief in UNFPA and handling gender and human rights. And
Yes, 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 it's mine. Okay. So first of all, thank you very much, and good afternoon. I would like to apologize for not being Kirian Bhatia, no, my colleague Kirian Bhatia. She had to travel urgently to Bangkok, back to Bangkok. She is the UNFPA gender advisor for Asia and the Pacific. And the reason why she had to travel back to Bangkok, I think it's quite relevant to the discussion we're having today. And you know why? It's because next week in Bangkok, the conference, the regional conference on women will take place. The Intergovernmental Regional Conference on Women will take place towards the 20th anniversary of the Beijing Platform for Action. And when you look at the draft resolution of this conference after 20 years, you can see that we are really, in danger. That here, we have been talking about men and boys, involving men and boys, which is, of course, very, very important, and we fully support. But 20 years later, Beijing, at the global level and at the regional level, we are facing a serious backlash in terms of how we conceptualized and expressed women's rights 20 years ago. And many countries now don't want even to talk about women's rights. They don't want even to talk about those rights they consider to be sensitive, mainly related to women's sexuality and reproduction. So I think this is very, very important, and also reflecting about where we are 20 years later, it's very important. And probably next week, we will have a resolution or a regional declaration that is much weaker than the one we had 20 years later. Because some countries and some governments have already said, I'm not going to endorse any declaration that speaks about A, B, C, D. No, I will not. So I think also reflecting about where we are, in terms of development and women's rights vis-a-vis development, it's very important. And that brings me to the second issue about also this discussion on men and boys and in the development sector. Because I think that this should be part of a much broader discussion. And it's the discussion about, the new development agenda. And we are not discussing, we are mentioning many times, we need to ensure that gender is part of the new development agenda. We need to ensure a target on violence against women in the new development agenda, but we are not addressing an in-depth discussion about what we mean, what's the narrative, what's the paradigm shift 15 years later, the Millennium Development Goals and the Millennium Declaration. What we have been hearing over these days is, we need to ensure a target on men and boys, let's say. We have been able to ensure, or at least we are in the process of ensuring a target on gender equality. Of course, this is very important, but that's the framework, the overall development narrative in which this, goals, targets, indicators will feed in. And in that sense, I think this is part of the broader and in-depth reflection we need to address. 15 years later, all UN member states were able to agree because they had a common goal. They have a glue. The glue was poverty eradication. But this is over now. This is not the glue any longer. No? And 15 years later, the principles of the Millennium Declaration are still very, very valid. If we look at them, if we read again, the Millennium Declaration is still very valid. But 15 years later, the world has changed dramatically. So we have very valid principles in a very different environment. So I think there are two issues we need to look at. First is the scope of the new development agenda. The Millennium Development Goals were goals for the South, were goals in a way imposed, or some countries felt were imposed to the developing countries. The new development agenda needs to be universal. Needs to be a universal development agenda, because harmful